Kim Casey.
And I'm Adrienne Johnson.
And we are
Reclaiming Sisterhood.
Today's episode is about collaboration and collective power, allies versus coopetition. It's going to be really good today. Our guest today is going to be Karen Freeman Wilson, the CEO of the Chicago Urban League. Before I just give her a full introduction, I want to provide some context for today's episode. We're going to explore the often silent dynamics of collaboration, competition, and connection among Black women, especially in leadership and systems shaping spaces. While we repeatedly told you, have your sisters back, the reality can involve navigating power struggles, conflicting interests, or invisible rules of inclusion. Our guest brings a lived insight to how Black women can build with each other rather than against each other, and how true allyship and collective leadership require both courage and clarity. As Black women, we don't often carry the work, yet we wonder if we can trust who stands beside us, or if often we'll be asked to carry it alone. In this conversation, we'll ask, how do we distinguish collaboration from competition? How we can redesign the culture of collective power so Black women can lead together, not just parallelly? And then what does it look like when our shared sisterhood becomes a force of transformation as opposed to an afterthought? Karen Freeman Wilson brings us her dynamic leadership. One is she's serving as the current president and CEO of the Chicago Urban League. She brings a passion for equity and social justice, and she works to advance economic, educational, and social progress for African Americans through direct service and advocacy. Having also served in the public arena most of her professional life, Karen has a deep experience in addressing issues that impact the urban communities. She was the mayor of her hometown, Gary, Indiana, from 2012 to 2019, and she was the first female to lead the city of Gary and the first Black female mayor in Indiana. Karen previously served as the Indiana Attorney General and several other high esteemed positions where she was leading. She's a graduate of Harvard College and the law school, and she chairs Cities for Financial Empowerment and sits on the board of the National Policy Institute, Center for Community Progress, Sandy Hook Promise, and the Lyric Opera of Chicago. Oh, I'm gonna have to talk to you about that later. She is a member of Delta Sigma Theta sorority and the Lynx. Welcome, Karen.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Awesome. Well, we want to reflect a little bit on performative sisterhood, where support is voiced but not practiced. We know that is an issue. One of the things around setting up this podcast, I would always ask women, I say, I have an unscientific research that I'm doing. And my unscientific research was, can Black women support each other without throwing each other under the bus? And most of the time, everybody like, oh, yeah, we can. And I say, give me an example. And then they would only be able to give me examples of times they were thrown under the bus.
Wow. Wow.
You are one of a handful of leaders that I know are always looking for how to connect with other people and how to build other people and how to collaborate, to the point to where I believe you've positioned the Urban League in a whole different bracket than it has been in the last 20 years. So the question I'm going to ask you is, how do you define true collaboration versus competition masked as support?
Well, first and foremost, I just want to thank you for the opportunity to join this podcast. I commend you both for the idea and the concept, Reclaiming Sisterhood. When I think about the idea of how we support each other, I think that that's my default, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm going to always be supportive of other Black women, of other people, but especially Black people, because I know they don't always get that support, right?
Yeah.
And so unless people show me otherwise, that's my default. And even when they do, I believe that there is generally a reason why people choose to not be supportive. And so I'm always asking myself, wonder why they did that, rather than saying, well, they're not going to be supportive, so I'm not going to be supportive, because that's just not my natural tendency or inclination. But I think also that it's hard for people to always be supportive because we're almost built to say what's in it for me. I mean, that is just generally how people think. And if that is your thought and you see someone coming to the table looking for something for themselves, then because you're looking at what's in it for you, you're not automatically going to be supportive. And maybe sometimes people are inclined to say, well, I'm going to support them, but I do want to know what's in it for me. But I think that if you go to the table just looking to find out about what a person is doing, understanding what they're interested in, both personally and professionally, you'll come to the common ground of what's in it for you. Because I'm not saying that I'm an altruist or that I'm just all altruistic all the time, but I just don't come to a relationship or come to a conversation with what can I get from that person.
So this is making me think of a couple of statistics. For every 64 Black women that are promoted to manager, is to every 100 men. And then in 2023, 3% of all senior leadership roles with S&P 500 companies were held by Black women. So it's continuously highlighting like this gap of women in these leadership positions, which is leading me to talk about like scarcity culture, right? Where it's only one job for the Black person. And so we got to duke it out with each other to get the job. What's that about?
So whenever I hear statistics, whether you're talking about set-asides, like the 10% set aside or the 5% set aside, or even in some instances, the 30 or 40% set aside, my question is always, what about that 60? Or what about that 70? Or what about that 95? I want to know about that other piece, because to your point, if I'm talking about the other part, then there is no scarcity, because we're talking about a much larger piece of the pie. And I think that we get stuck in the scarcity conversation because we assume that that's the only portion that we will qualify for or that we will be considered for. And I'm saying I just reject that notion. And I want to know about the bigger piece of the puzzle or the pie.
Like it.
Yeah, I love that. So when you're talk about that bigger piece of the puzzle, I think about liberation for all people, right? Like liberation not just for, one race or, women as a whole, but everybody. When we're thinking about that, what does radical allyship between women of color truly require?
I think that radical allyship requires us really understanding what the other person needs and being willing to explore that need, even in the context of that having nothing to do with what you need or what you're doing. I'm just focused on that. And I'll give you one example that is something that I often think about. So I look at Chicago State University, and I think it is not only a resource for our community, I think it is an anchor institution. It's important to our community. And in addition to that, I appreciate what Z. Scott has done in making a decision to leave a lucrative practice of law and lead the institution, and is constantly looking to build it. So whenever I think about resources, whenever I think about opportunities, whenever I think about what's happening in the General Assembly, I think about Chicago State.
Yeah.
Now, sometimes that happens in the context of what I'm doing with the league, but very often it happens in the context of just me understanding how important that institution is to our community. So for me, that's one example of radical allyship.
And do you think allyship is just about affirmations, or are we to take the risk with each other?
So I would say that when you're just talking about affirmations, that's not radical. I think when you act on those affirmations, when you actually do something.
Yeah.
And, you know, what I would say is that I've had people to act on, to actively seek out. Certainly Z is one of those people. Amina Dickerson is another person. Folks who have just actively said, I want to help you. I see what you're trying to do. I want to help you. And who do, right? Because it's one thing to say, I want to help you. I want to be helpful. I mean, we all want to be helpful generally. But being able to move away from our own agendas and just spend a little time, and it doesn't have to be a lot of time because we only have so many hours in a day, right?
Yeah.
But just spend a little time to say, you know, how can I be helpful to Kim? How can I be helpful to Adrienne? And what does that look like?
You mispronounced my name as Adrienne.
That's right. I forgot we had renamed you for the purpose of this episode.
So for everybody, I'm Adrienne. This is Karen, and that's Kim.
That's right.
We had to have the case.
We had to let the K's rock this episode.
Okay, so what you're saying to me reminds me of a relationship that I had with another business owner. We were collaborating, but it turned into a coopetition. And it almost turned into a place where I did the work, but she got the reward. Can you talk to us about that and how maybe you've dealt with that so that any woman that's listening here can kind of figure out how to maneuver through that?
Well, you know, first, I just have to say that that's unfortunate. And I would also say that sometimes when you find yourself in that situation, you might be inclined to walk away. What I would say is that it is a teachable moment for the other woman. Now, what you have to decide is whether or not you feel like holding class.
That's right.
Because if we give in to that coopetition or coopetition, then we create another person who will be more likely to stab somebody else in the back or, you know, undermine another sister or not be helpful. And there are enough people who do things like that that we don't need to do it to each other. So I would just take a few moments to say, hey, this feels like, and describe what it feels like to her, and say, and I just want to know if that's what your intent was, because it might not have been. Now, it took me 60 years to get to this point.
That's good.
65 to be
That's really
honest. And, but I would say more and more, I'm trying to stop myself and just ask whether a person intended that, and if they did, why.
I love that you say that. So one of our values is grace, right?
I'm
And
bringing
so
the same thing.
when that, like, all that kept screaming to me was, give our sisters grace. Give our
have to give
sisters
each other
grace.
grace.
Give our sisters, even if, my reset is a Pepsi. So
That's a good reset.
if you see me walk out and get a Pepsi, I got to reset. But to also in that process, in my reset, really talk to myself and say, hey, give her grace. Like, you don't know what that's about. Give her grace.
Right.
So I love that. I love that. That's a great nugget for us.
Well, and the reality is that we know the pressure that we are all under. And so if we're under pressure, then I think it's fair to assume that the other person, particularly the other Black woman, is under pressure, and you don't know how that pressure showed up for her. She may feel like that if she doesn't get this opportunity, or if she doesn't get this funding, or if she doesn't get this recognition, that it's going to cost her greatly. And you don't know what that cost is.
Yeah.
And so, but I would say we have to address it. And and you may have to walk away for a couple of days or a week or something to just give you the words to address it, so that we can address it one way or we can address it the other way, and so that you can address it in the most productive way.
Yeah, that's really good. So when I think about leadership, and the positionalities of leadership, leading along somebody, or I say bossing up over somebody.
Sure.
How do you navigate building collective power in those hierarchical spaces?
Wow, that is a really loaded question. And it's particularly important if you find yourself reporting to a board, or if you find yourself working with a city council, or if you find yourself in a position where there is another level of hierarchy that you have to function within. And I think that the first thing is that you have to be secure in your position as a leader. And that way you don't get dragged into a tug of war about leadership.
Yeah.
Where, you might be inclined to say, well, I'm in charge. Or the other person is, while the other person is saying, no, I'm in charge. Or I instruct you, or I have authority, or I have power over you. And so the first thing is you have to be secure in your power. I would actually say that's the second thing. The first thing is you need to know where the power comes from. For me, it comes from God.
Yes.
So if he's given all the power, then I don't have to worry about being in a tug of war with you.
That's right.
Because he's going to give me everything I need
Yeah.
to lead, to do, to succeed.
Yes.
And if that is my perspective, then I am less inclined to get into a tug of war. Now, that's not always been my default. And, as recently as last week, I probably fell off that square. But I'm always drawn back to that position to say, wait, what are you doing? You're forgetting about the source. So every day I have an opportunity to go back to the source, and that makes me less inclined to get into that struggle, that power struggle.
So moving beyond the power struggle, right? There is still a confronting, and sometimes I say carefronting that needs to happen, right? And so you talked a little bit about it when you said just go to the person and kind of bring it up to them. But, that's the words. Like, but how do we actually, what do we got to do to get to that point, right? Because I got to put myself on the line to come to you and say how I'm feeling. And then I got to be open to hearing however you're going to respond, right?
Right.
And then as a person that's maybe new to managing relationships, what's my thing? What do I got to do?
I think, or I would suggest that it requires us to, one, be honest with ourselves, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes we have to be brutally honest. And there may even be a time where you talk to someone that you trust and whose opinion you trust. I have a 31-year-old daughter. And while she is my child, she is very wise, and I trust her opinion. And there are times where I feel comfortable talking to her about things, and she will be, as only a child can, brutally honest. And I'll have to say, I'm not going to be defensive because I brought this to you.
Right.
And I have to step back and think, and I'm like, yeah, that is true. I think there are other times when we know, particularly if we have a way of centering ourselves, whether that is prayer or meditation or yoga or just going for a Pepsi or, whatever we do, it is a source of allowing us to really be introspective.
Yeah.
And to find the words and find the humility, find the grace, find all of those things that allows us to then go to that person and say, you know what, I'm really sorry first because I've taken this out of context, even though you may not have done anything. You may not have done anything. But sometimes when you approach them that way, it gives you the space, gives you both the space to work through something that you need to work through. I came to the conclusion probably Friday or Saturday that I need to do that with somebody. And so they say that every preacher who preaches a sermon is really preaching to himself.
That's right.
That's what's happening today. I promise you.
I love it. I
promise
love
you.
that.
Awesome.
In that message, I heard a few things. It's okay for us to be vulnerable in spaces, right? And sometimes we have to be that example of vulnerability to somebody else, right? So in Kim's case, where it was coopetition, maybe that person didn't even know how to be vulnerable. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
How I describe Black women sometimes is I say, we never get an opportunity to just kind of show up as we are because we put a mask on for white men, we got a different one for white women, we got one for black men. And because we all masked up, when we come in contact with each other, we're like, right? And so what I'm taking from this is, Adrienne, it's okay to be vulnerable in these spaces. And even if I didn't do nothing wrong, sometimes an apology is something that somebody gonna get, and it's almost like curing something that you didn't do.
Right, right. You may be apologizing to them for someone else.
Yeah.
You didn't even do that.
Yep.
But at least it opens the door
Yes.
for them to be more vulnerable in the conversation, to just have the conversation that needs to be held. And you're right. You know, when folks are putting on different masks for different folks or different people, it's just hard to ultimately show up to the sister circle
Yeah.
unmasked. And, you know, it may simply be that you need the permission to take yours off. And that apology or that, you know,
Disarming.
hey, may just give you that permission.
Oh man, that was good. I need to write some notes in this one. Dang, I need to write some notes. Wow, that's awesome. Thank you for that. The wisdom that you shared is really, really good. Like I said, I needed to pull out my phone and take some notes on that. And so
I appreciate that.
Yeah,
but it's
thank
like
you.
I said, with David said, sometimes you need to encourage yourself.
Yeah, of course,
And,
of course. Well,
that
and we
is-
can tell you are
yeah.
a self-encourager, right?
Well, yeah.
And all of the work that you've been doing at the Urban League, I think we would be remiss if we didn't lift that up on this podcast, because one of the reasons why, I centered you in this collaboration and collective power episode is because that's exactly what you're doing over there at the Urban League. So can you talk a little bit maybe about how you're, like, I think about the impact group with the entrepreneurs you're doing.
Sure.
You're building movements over there at the league, whether or not people are talking about it or not. So I want you to have an opportunity to kind of lift that up.
So first, let me thank you for saying that. The thing that I would lift up first and foremost is that it is a team effort, right? And if there is any gift that I have, it's the ability to kind of bring a team together and to sometimes get folks to work like an orchestra. Now, you know, if there are other times that we're not always in sync and the sound isn't quite right, and that's when we have to stop and when we have to reset.
Yeah.
And so when you talk about the impact program, 11 years old, a program that really speaks to the leadership journey of young Black professionals and how we can promote that, because there are not other spaces that is solely focused on that. You may get some of that from an LGC. You may get some of that from the Multicultural Leadership Academy at the Latino Policy Forum. But at the League, our goal is to focus on you as someone who will ultimately lead in our community, both professionally and civically. The other program, our Next One program, comes out of our Center for Entrepreneurship. The need to say to entrepreneurs, you're next. You're the next one. You've built a business. It's a proven model. How do we make you that business that will employ people, that will be a philanthropic organization that will support the community in the way that it needs to be supported, understanding, especially now, that you may not have all the philanthropic support that you need from outside of the community. And if that's the case, then we want to nurture, we want to support, and we want to encourage. And we've been able to do that through two significant cohort-based programs, Impact and Next One. But in addition to that, we have our housing and financial empowerment that focuses on home ownership.
Nice.
We have our youth and family services that focuses on social emotional learning for young people and mentorship. We focus on the work that we do with workforce development. In fact, that's our largest body of work, where we are trying to go to the next job, the job that won't necessarily be extinct in 10 or 15 years. And so right now, we're focusing on AI and many things tech. Right now, we're focusing on cybersecurity. And right now, we're focused still on solar, understanding that there has been sort of this national effort against it, but we still think it's relevant, and it's relevant for the future.
Awesome. Thank you.
Nice.
Everybody join me in just thanking Karen as a waymaker here in Chicago, and proving that sisterhood is not just about affirmation, it's about accountability, it's about action, it's about alignment, it's about doing the deep and often uncomfortable work of unlearning competition and embracing co-creation. So thank you, Karen.
Thank you both, Kim, Adrienne, also known as Adrienne. It's been just a joy to be with you today.
Awesome.
If this episode sparked something in you, we ask that you share it with other sisters who you know and work with. Start a conversation in your circle, your team, your institution, and follow us, review, and help this movement reach those who need it most. Above all, choose connection over competition and courage over comfort. This is how we reclaim together. This is Reclaiming Sisterhood. Welcome home.